Okay, so today we have Dr. Oleksandr Pankieiev talking about the life and legacy of Dr. Roman Petryshyn. So first, I'm going to ask you to describe some of your most vivid memories growing up at various stages in your life and how you became involved in Ukrainian studies in Canada.
Probably it will be the longest answer. Yeah, because I was born in Zaporizhia. It's a city in southern Ukraine. So just several years before the collapse of Soviet Union. So, but my family relocated to my mom's village in Kharkiv region, so really close to the Russian border. And when the Soviet Union collapsed, I actually was about to start my first grade. So for me, it was a really pivotal moment because I think that it is probably the first memory I remember. So in terms of politics, yes, what was actually reported on television and on radio, because it was discussed in my family really in not in details, but I could see that it is something what concerned them. Sorry. I'll put on mute. When I relocated to Zaporizhia, to that village in Kharkiv region, it was a really transformative moment for me because Zaporizhia is a Russian-speaking city, and I was speaking Russian before, but because we relocated to the village, and villages in southern and eastern Ukraine are mostly Ukrainian speaking. So I transferred slowly to Ukrainian, and Ukrainian became my first language. So I'm still using Ukrainian at home. So, but my family is bilingual. So my father, he spoke Russian. Unfortunately, he passed away just 2 years ago. And my mama, she speaks Ukrainian, so I was immersed in two different worlds. So, and my identity was formed like looking at different words because my mom, she was like really pro-Ukrainian. My father, he had some nostalgia for the past times about Soviet Union, and I always was listening to all kind of arguments in this area. But because I was a kid, I didn't actually understand what actually happening, and because it was a village, I couldn't have access to a good library to figure out what was actually happening in the country, and even for me to understand what was that country at that age, because I was just 7 years when everything happened. So until I left my village, I suffered some like gaps in my knowledge because I didn't have any access to really good literature because my village's library was really poor. All books that my library in my village had, they were published during the Soviet period, and school received some new textbooks, history textbooks, and it was probably the main source for me to learn about what actually happened in the country and the history of my country. So I became really interested in history, and it's because of my history teacher, who was right now I am understanding that he was really authoritarian, maybe. So, but at that moment I was amazed with his knowledge and his attitudes and everything. So now I'm recollecting and I'm thinking that I'm actually thinking that he was too authoritarian. But he actually that was that person that pushed me towards becoming a historian. And when I finished my school, so I returned to Zaporizhia, to the city where I was born, and I started my history program at the local university, Zaporizhia National University. And then I finally had access to some good literature, and not only good literature, but because it was first time when I used internet. And it was 2003 probably. So can you imagine how actually it was really difficult for Ukraine, because we still have problems with rural internet in Ukraine. But at that time, even in cities, many people, they didn't have access to internet. It was something really rare to have your home access. But I used my library access to internet. But it was, I don't know if it was something common in Canada, but we had internet cafes. So, and you could stay for the whole night, just like searching something, but usually people use those cafes just to play some games. But also those cafes, they had some gigs like me, just searching information about different perspectives about the history and what is going on in your country. So it was my first actually encounter with different sources. So, but when I finished that university, I moved from Russian-speaking city to Kiev and started my PhD program. And it was like probably the first time when I actually figured out how diverse Ukraine is. Yes, because in Kiev, I lived in PhD students' dormitory, and we had PhD students from across country, from Lviv, Ternopil, from Odessa, Crimea, Kharkiv, Dnipropetrovsk, and I had opportunity to learn about the perspectives of different people from different corners of Ukraine, about how it is to be Ukrainian also. And because I started doing my PhD program, and I was working on my dissertation about southern Ukraine, so for especially it has also a specific term, steppe Ukraine, so about 18th century, and I actually used opportunity to discuss what I actually learned with my fellows PhD students from different actually backgrounds, not only historians, because we had PhD students like in biology, chemistry, literature, so, and we had like really long nights discussing different topics, and history was one of those topics that we discussed. And then when I was working on my dissertation, I already knew about the connections that my home university, Zaporizhia University, had with Canada actually. Because when I was still student back in Zaporizhia, so we had some people coming to us from Canada, and we had several joint projects, and they were sponsored by Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies. Yes, and I also knew about Serhiy Plokhy, who was from Zaporizhia and who moved to Canada and had really successful career at the Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies, and then from the Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies moved to Harvard and became the director there. And for me it was okay, he is from Zaporizhia and I'm from Zaporizhia, so, and also I knew that Roman Shiyan, who was also from Zaporizhia, is in Ukraine, in Edmonton. So I started exploring opportunities to make some research here in Canada. I was particularly really interested to study English literature about 18th century. So what was written in English about not only southern Ukraine but also about Ukraine in this particular time, and about also Russian Empire. So I contacted Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies, and they responded immediately, and they offered me to come for several months and to proceed with my research. And it happened in 2011. So it was first time when I came to Canada, and I met Ukrainian community here. My first actually real Ukrainian community was not actually Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies, but it was Ukrainian Armada housing co-op, where I stayed and rented a room for 6 months at that period. So I had a really good opportunity to explore Ukrainian community from different perspective, from academic perspective, how Ukrainian community has organized its academic life here, and also from the perspective of locals, how they live, what they are doing in their free time. So I learned about Malanka. So I learned about some like traditions they have in terms of like potlucks and etc. So, and I even argued about vocabulary, Ukrainian vocabulary that local Ukrainians used here. Because for me, as a Easterner, I actually was shocked when people use some words, and I actually argued with Lydia Somchynsky about zupa. So for me, zupa, it is actually soup, so not kind of zupa. And then I started figuring out how actually diverse Ukrainian community here, and about all of these cultural aspects. But I had to return back to Ukraine to proceed with my dissertation, and at that time I was actually also offered a position at the Academy of Science in Ukraine. So I continued working on my dissertation and was also a research fellow in Ukraine. And I realized that actually I need to go to Canada a second time, and also because I discovered a lot of literature, but I didn't have enough time to work with all of amount I could find. So, and then I came second time to Canada, and it was the time when I actually learned more about Ukrainian community. I met Bogdan Medvitsky at that moment, who took me to different local Ukrainian organizations. So I don't know how many actually I visited with him. So during my second course, and I was amazed how different those Ukrainian organizations were. So they were dealing with dance, for example. They were just pursuing some local studies, as for example we have Pioneers organization. So and I had to return back to home again, and then third time when I came to Canada, it was 2013. And 2013, it was a really dramatic period for Ukraine also. because Euromaidan happened, and also because I had a partner at that moment here in Canada, so I decided to stay with my partner here. So that is why actually how I happen to be here in Canada. So and when revolution started in Ukraine, I was the organizer of Euromaidan here in Edmonton. So because I saw on the internet that all cities around Canada, they are putting Euromaidan, and I didn't see that it is something going on to be the case in Edmonton. And I was posting on Facebook that okay, let's all get together in on Churchill Square. So. And actually, it was first time when I met Roman Petryshyn. Yeah, so it was my short story about how I became actually integral part of Ukrainian community here. Since then, I occupied several positions. So right now, I'm the president of Alberta Society for the Method of Ukrainian Studies. I'm the vice president of Alberta Association for Local and International Education. I'm the vice president also of Friends of Ukrainian Folklore. So, and I'm sitting on another boards. For example, I'm the board member of Canada Ukraine Chamber of Commerce also. So I'm deeply involved not only as a scholar but also as a community member in all kind of organizations. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. Can you go back and tell me a little bit about that moment when you met Dr. Roman Petryshyn?
Yes, so I met him briefly when I organized that event. So I was just introduced by, I don't know by whom, just briefly. But a real actually meeting happened a little bit later. Because at that moment, McEwen and the Canadian Institute of Ukrainian Studies and also Institute for Advancement Studies, they started a project about current events at that moment in Ukraine, about Euromaidan. And they were looking for the coordinator who could lead that project and also for work together with Roman Petryshyn, because Roman Petryshyn was who started that project together with Olenka Bilash. So, and they invited me to be the coordinator, and they were as co-investigators. So it was first time when I met Roman Petryshyn. I was invited to his office, and at McEwen University. It's not in the main building. It used to be in somewhere really close to the Jasper Avenue. So I remember that he has his office. He had his office there. So, and we discussed different actually frameworks, and I remember that he actually was really fascinated about my ideas. I was really fascinated about his ideas and Olenka's ideas, and I joined that project, and I was a coordinator of that project for 6 months. So yeah, and that project was the title of that project was Contemporary Ukraine Research Forum Initiative.
Perfect. And how would you describe your current working relationship and the projects that you've worked on with Roman since that first one?
Oh, I had many opportunities to work with Roman on different projects. Because the second project that I was involved, and Roman Petryshyn was also co-investigator on that project, is also about Ukraine. and it was also sponsored by Cool Institute for Advancement Studies. And it was right before we finished our first project about Euromaidan, because Euromaidan was just only one event, but we saw that Ukraine was going through transformations in different domains, like education, like rule of law, and also reforms about education. So, and that project was 3 years. It's a 3-year project. And I was invited also to be a coordinator on that project. Yes, and I worked for that project for 3 years. I helped to organize also conferences in Ukraine, and also we had many conferences in Alberta. We collaborated with universities in Ukraine, particularly on that project we had as a collaborator Kharkiv National University. I even traveled to Kharkiv to help with organization of the conference, the final conference. I remember it was like 2018 when I traveled to Ukraine, and it was also for me first time when I traveled to Ukraine since I came to Canada and since the revolution. So it was for me the really interesting experience, because I came to Ukraine and it wasn't Ukraine that I left. So I experienced some cultural shock also from my own culture, and it was for me really existential experience in terms of who am I.
Wonderful, thank you. Could you describe one of your most vivid memories of working with Dr. Petryshyn, whether it's professional or personal as well?
In terms of personal, I remember when I set up an interview with Roman, and unfortunately I couldn't make it to that interview because I had an accident. And it was really a funny story, because I had this accident just only 5 minutes before leaving my house for the interview, and with Roman, who was actually already in the location, and I was calling him from emergency room that I cannot make it for the for that interview. And I remember how he was shocked and I was shocked also, because everything was actually perfect. I set up my camera, I had everything. So, but unfortunately, so I'm remembering this as a really funny story, because everything ended perfectly for me. So, and I recorded interview with Roman later in a couple of weeks. Yeah. So, but in terms of professional, I'm really fascinated with Roman, with his ability to lead projects and initiate them. So, because he has the vision always. So every time when he's thinking about the project, he has the vision. So he sees how that project will develop in the future and what kind of impact this project will have on the local community and on Ukrainian community at large, when we are speaking about global Ukrainian community. So because I worked with him on so many projects, and right now I'm the vice president of the organization where he is the president, and that organization started as the organization for people with who are deaf or hard hearing. So I was amazed that he is actually also in this area, and he has been working in this area for almost 20 years. So he has really diverse portfolio of his interests, and not only interests, but he is managing to achieve a great deal in every specific project he set up. So yeah.
Could you elaborate on those points a little bit and explore how Dr. Petryshyn's work has strengthened the Ukrainian Canadian community in Alberta and Canada?
Yes, so in terms of Ukrainian Canadian relations, because Roman Petryshyn, he actually, I think, one of those who started thinking about Ukraine as a collaborator when Ukraine became independent state. Because he knew that Ukraine needs help, and also he used opportunity to share the knowledge that Canadian community and Ukrainian Canadian community had, not only in developing some research, but also like medical reform, for example, because he was really instrumental in helping Ukraine with nursing programs. So, for example, he established really strong ties with local medical institutions in Ukraine, and particularly with Ternopil National Medical University, and many professionals traveled to Canada to get some training, and vice versa. From Canada, we had many delegations that traveled to Ukraine. So it's something really fascinating that he was thinking about the future of Ukrainian community, and health is actually the future of any community. So he was really eager to help Ukraine to set up a proper program in nursing. So that is why it was like probably one of the main his areas he work with Ukraine. It's actually medical reforms. So and here in Alberta, so I think it's we can actually we can lost count those projects that Roman participated, helped, consulted. So and they are really diverse. They are social projects, first of all. So they are not only cultural projects, but also social projects that he helped local Ukrainian communities to succeed in the social environments also. So and also helped to establish many cultural and projects. So his experience helps us to understand how Ukrainian community is organized, because we see that Roman Petryshyn worked with Spilka, кредитова спілка, for example, but he also was really instrumental with Canada-Ukraine Chamber of Commerce. So something what is about ties Ukraine and Canada. So I think it is really unique perspective because usually we are working just only with some domain, but Roman has worked with all domains of local and also international Ukrainian diaspora.
Thank you for expanding on that question for me. How has Dr. Petryshyn's work personally impacted you and your career? I know you've touched on this a little bit, but if there's anything you'd like to add.
Yes, because through that project, I was introduced to a local academia. I had worked with so many people because it was a collaborative project, not only between McEwen and University of Alberta, but also we had as a collaborator Concordia University College University that is located in Edmonton. I don't remember how many people we had on that project, but I think it was approximately 30 people. So for scholars from different backgrounds, so historians, folklorists, linguists. It was a really good opportunity for me to become aware of the of this diversity in terms of their research, because I met many people from university, from Concordia University, from also from McEwen University. So and we worked on different subjects as for example like space, because our friend, I forgot his name. I will recall later. So it was really fascinating for me to become the part of that community.
And just to finish up, which we can take as much time as you like with this last question, is there another story that you'd like to share with me, or is there something you'd like to add to the stories you have already shared with me today?
I just want to add about this particular project that we are doing in this moment about Roman Petryshyn, because I know that this project not only is about Roman Petryshyn, but it is about Ukrainian community and generational shift in Ukrainian community. And Roman Petryshyn is really interested in that change that is happening right now. So because later many people will be also interviewed not only about Roman but also about other people who were really active in Ukrainian community in different projects. It's something what is really timely and important, not only for Ukrainian community but for the Ukrainian for community at large. Yes, because awareness about who those people are living around you is really important. And the Ukrainian community, what is right now we are doing, we are telling the story about who we are. So who we were, who we are right now, and what actually our goals as a community also, because that project that URDC is doing right now about indigenous and Ukrainian relations is something really fascinating, because it was like outside of the scope of our interest for so long, and Ukrainian community ignored such aspect of the local life. And I'm just looking forward into learning how many other projects and how many other questions we will put in front of us as a scholars, as an Ukrainian community members. So I'm really fascinated to learn that this project is the part of bigger maybe something.
Well, I'm very happy to hear your thoughts on this project, and I really appreciate all your insights and your time today for the interview.